You're listening to the Kasanova Podcast, bringing you the latest in gaming, politics, and other entertainment. Now here's your host, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber, Mekel Kasanova.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I'm back with another amazing episode with a very, very special guest, someone I greatly admire, and I just love their content through and through. They are the most influential, in my opinion, and most knowledgeable in the FGC as far as commentary goes, and just a breakdown and analysis. You don't see anything like this on YouTube or even on podcasts. I mean, you also do have other people like Core A Gaming, but this man, MacSplicer, comes at it from a unique perspective that's unlike anything else. And I'm ready to get into this episode so you can experience the magnificence of this guy's mind. And with that being said, if you're ready to do it, I'm ready to do it. Let's go ahead and get right into this episode. Welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I have got with me right now such an honor to have the amazing MacSplicer on the podcast. Mac, go ahead and introduce yourself, man. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. Thank you. Again, it's been a long time coming. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm MacSplicer. I kind of just refer to myself as just a dude on the internet that talks about fighting games. And I've been doing it for about, I want to say close to 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And I originally started as a freelance journalist, trying to review video games and talk about video games because I really liked not old school, but like that era in 2004, 2005, 2006, yeah. Like IGN, GameSpot. I was a big fan of those journalists who would really put in op-eds and video game reviews that I really enjoyed. But somewhere along the way, I decided to focus more on fighting games because I figured that it was a bigger passion for me than just mainstream video games. So I honed in on that. And ever since then, I've been kind of talking about fighting games, the fighting game community, and been recording a little podcast of me talking to myself about fighting games. And sometimes I have guests on, but for the most part, it's just me.
Well, man, your podcast has been just simply amazing. I remember coming across your channel and your podcast, I want to say closer to the beginning of the year. And I'm like, man, this guy's got such amazing content. And I listen to podcasts a lot, especially I work for a hospital. So when I'm at the desk working all day, podcasts are what make the day go a lot faster.
Oh, for sure.
And your work, man, I'm simply in love with it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't really like listening to my own voice. So I only if I have to edit something where the audio is wrong. But I'm not a fan of my own voice. So I don't watch any of my videos or any of my things. So when people say that they like my work, it's kind of awkward for me because I don't, but I still put it out there. But if people are enjoying it, that's all that matters. Cause I really enjoy talking about these things, not so much listening to myself talk about those things.
And you also have a website too, MacSplicer.com. And everyone
Yes.
who's watching and listening, make sure you go and check out his website. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Well, that was the initial. So I actually spoke to, I don't know if you know who Colin Moriarty is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I spoke to him back in I emailed him back in the old school IGN days, back when he was still with Podcast Beyond and he would do Game Scoop and all that stuff. And I found him to be very inspiring as a journalist because I found his style of writing very similar to my own, or something that I want to strive for. So I asked him, what would I have to do in order to become a better writer? And he said one of the things is, even if you're not freelancing for any websites, just make sure that you write your thoughts down and then you post them for other people to see, and then you'll get feedback that way and you become much better. So I started a WordPress, and ever since then, I just been kind of focusing on, I started as writing reviews for specific games. And then once I caught fire with just, I wanted to focus, and shout outs to the Tunes channel on YouTube, because he actually had me on his podcast back when I had 5 subscribers, and he gave me advice about finding your niche, which I thought was very inspirational, because once I figured that I have some sort of quote unquote expertise in this one thing, it's better to focus on that than try to spread out all over the place. Yeah. So ever since then, I've just been focusing on fighting games, and it's actually paid dividends, because the listeners to the podcast or the people who watch the videos are all there for one specific thing, and that's fighting games or the fighting game community. And I feel we all share something in common, and it's nice to have like an audience that is very focused on something that I enjoy doing. So it's not like spread out. So some people, won't get confused of what my next video is going to be. They know somewhat what the theme will be or what the next write-up will be. Same thing.
Yeah, and I actually got that advice from, very similar advice from another YouTuber, Amazing Lucas. Shout out to him. Because I've been in YouTube for about 2 years now, a little over 2 years. And, I've done everything from reviewing to politics to shot comedy to reactions. And, he really helped me narrow down to what it is I actually want to do. And I'm like, I love gaming more than I love anything else. And I love interviewing people and just talking to people in the community or in the industry. And he's like, what you could do is approach it from an angle of interviewing other people within your community, voice actors, PR people in the gaming community, and also still do your reviews. He's like, that way you don't have a very divided audience. And if you want to do other stuff, you can always make a second channel. And I think you and I have been talking about that. Like I made a second channel just so I can have one specific audience here that knows what I'm going to be doing, and the others that like the other content, they can go to that one. So
yeah, I feel that that's a trap, or not so much a trap, but that's something that a lot of like ambitious YouTubers just starting out, they fall into, because they have so many ideas, but it's tough for them to focus on one. So I think it's something very common when you first start out. And I think everybody who starts with some sort of a passion to making videos or writing something, he kind of falls into that. But eventually, once you find your way, I find it to be a little easier.
Definitely. And I wanted to ask you, what has been your experience, being a content creator and podcast host, on YouTube? You're also on iTunes, and, for your website as well. Like, what have been some of your ups and downs that you've experienced on your content creation journey?
Well, I've been really enjoyed it, because ever since I started creating content, especially once I started just focusing on fighting games, I've never considered it to be work or like a task, or I've always enjoyed doing it. Now, I'm not a big fan of editing videos because they're so time consuming, and I'm not a huge fan of writing up scripts, but I know that's a part of the process. So I do enjoy seeing the final product. And then as long as people enjoy it, that's what I like. And then putting it out. And then it also really starts conversation with, you'd be surprised. Sometimes I read comments like on my YouTube channel, and there's people in those comment sections that are so much smarter than me. They just don't have a platform to really say anything, or they don't make YouTube videos on their own. So that's why I want to engage those people, because I have returning subscribers on my channel that have so much to say. They just don't have the outlet. And if I can kind of spark up that conversation, and then they take it somewhere else. So that's definitely been an up, because I feel that even though my community is somewhat small, it's very engaging with how they treat, either newcomers to fighting games in the comments, or, to the podcast or anything. As far as the downs, I don't think there's been too many downs. I feel that once I focus on fighting games, it's been pretty good. I think the only downs have been, maybe when there isn't much going on as far as like the FGC or fighting games announcements or anything. I don't really put out content because I don't have anything to talk about. So I'm kind of out of ideas, and my ideas, a lot of times it takes a while for me to marinate on one. And a lot of times they come out of nowhere, where I just decide, hey, I kind of want to write about this. And then I'll just put a pen and a paper. And sometimes I'll just leave it there for days. And then I'll go back to it. It's like, well, let me revise that, and maybe I'll make a video for it. But a lot of it just happens almost organically. So the one bad part is I don't really have a schedule of, what I do.
I'm in that same boat. I know how that is. I think that's also, that's the stressful part of it too, but it's also the fun part, is like you can make content when you're feeling inspired to do so, when something moves you to it. And I know that's kind of like a trend I've seen when it comes to YouTube. You have those who can just throw out content daily because they can talk about, you got the YouTubers, and especially in gaming, that talk about the news and the the stock prices, which I don't know why as gamers we should care about stock prices, but they put out, they put that out. Oh, Nintendo or Sony, their sales numbers are this, and I'm like, I don't care. Is this game good? Or but then you have content creators like yourself and like my friend Slasher JPC, he runs Just and Positive Gaming on YouTube, and you guys like just make such quality content that it's like I don't care how long it takes you to make it, so long as you make it and I can sit and enjoy it. And I think that's the kind of the dynamic that we're seeing when it comes to content creation. We got the immediate daily people, and then we got the ones who make the quality content, and it comes with a uniqueness to it, and that's what I appreciate. And I appreciate the work you put out.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I'm very much with anything that I do. I much prefer, whether it's listening to other people or watching other people, especially ever since I started content creating, I appreciate quality over quantity, because now I'll look at other people's videos and I'll be like, man, that was really hard to edit. So I'll, props to that guy or that girl, whoever made that video, because I appreciate it so much more. Versus when I was, a little younger, before I started content creating, I would just kind of take it for granted. It's like, oh, there's another video. But being a content creator, it puts things in perspective of how much work goes into making some of these things.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I wanted to ask you, what got you into gaming? Like, what is the game that just it changed your life? You're like, yeah, this is what I'm about.
I don't really know. I've been always kind of played games, but I didn't play the traditional ones. So I didn't have a Nintendo growing up, so I didn't grow up with Mario and Mario and Link weren't in my life. Donkey Kong, they weren't a part of my growing up. I grew up playing, honestly, King of Fighters 94, but back when they ported it to the PC version. So I played it so many years later. And I remember playing arcade mode and just constantly just dying. I also had an arcade growing up, so I would go there a lot and play like Tekken 3, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And I would play like very weird games growing up, but I took a sort of like a small hiatus from like middle school to about the end of high school, where I didn't really play any games. I just focused on sports and stuff like that. So, but what I realized is later growing up is with like sports and like going to arcade and stuff, I'm a very competitive person. So that's why I don't fall into the more traditional games as, the narrative driven one. Even though I like those, they're fine, but I don't feel that competitive edge when I play something like Uncharted or Assassin's Creed. That's why I really enjoy fighting games, because they're so personal. There's a lot of accountability. It's skill versus skill, 1v1 in normal cases. And I love the fact that there's so much depth, even though it's such a simple concept.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And with a lot of the games that have been coming out, especially the single player games, definitely the ones from Sony, I feel like they're more interactive movies than anything else. It's Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, they're very grandiose.
Yeah, and I've been someone like, I grew up in the arcades back in the 90s. I remember being on milk crates playing Street Fighter 2 and then Art of Fighting and Fatal Fury and World Heroes. I remember loving World Heroes. It's super unique, and I know probably a lot of the younger generation, they're probably not familiar with a lot of the SNK games, but SNK in the 90s was going toe to toe.
Oh yeah,
with Capcom. But it's just fighting games. I feel like it's in my DNA. Like I can always like you. I also took a hiatus from playing a lot of games. I grew up as a Nintendo kid, but towards my end of my high school years, going into my freshman up to junior year of college, I wasn't really gaming much. But when I came back to it, I was just all about fighting games. And, from King of Fighters 94, my favorite being 98, the Slugfest, Mark of the Wolves.
I love that game.
Oh man, I love that. The Last Blade 1 and 2. Oh man,
Yeah, I feel a lot of people do that. They go back to their roots after a while, and if your roots are fighting games, you have a plethora of games to play.
Definitely, man. And and I wanted to ask you, like, what is your take on the current state of fighting games and gaming in general in comparison to the previous generations?
Well, gaming in general, I feel I'm going to sound like an old man here, but I talk to a lot of friends who are similar in age, so like 24, 25, 26. That I don't feel that games are necessarily catered to our demographic anymore. They're catered to a little bit of a younger audience.
Yeah.
Because when I see a lot of games that are coming out, I just have no interest in them. And also has a lot to do because I'm so focused on fighting games that perhaps I don't see them in the same light that perhaps the mainstream does. But I remember being 18 and 19 and seeing like Uncharted 3 coming out and be like, oh, that looks cool. And I mean, I've played like a game like The Last of Us, the initial one. And now seeing a trailer for the second one, I'm like, that's really cool, but it's still not, it doesn't make me want to play it for some reason. And I can't really pinpoint why, except for I just feel that there's a disconnect with how games are made these days. And I feel that they're kind of they're making them just to make them, and they're not really thinking about them. The Last of Us 2 is not a great example because I think that's going to be a really good narrative. But back when Assassin's Creed was just putting out game year after year after year, and it didn't really seem different. And it's just they're putting out, like we've talked about, quantity over quality. Like there's a Call of Duty every year, there's an Assassin's Creed every year, and it's just I felt that it kind of cheapens the industry.
Yeah.
As far as fighting games, and hopefully I don't trigger anybody. Fighting games, I feel, are both in a good and somewhat of a not bad place, but there's potential for some concern. Good in the fact that I feel that when you talk about fighting games in 2018 compared to just 2013 when the initial Capcom Cup happened, we are in such the exponential growth that we've experienced in the last 5 years is something that I didn't even see coming.
Yeah.
And I feel that it bodes really well for for the future of fighting games. I feel that we will live on in a pretty good strength as far as numbers. However, the two games that I feel that are doing the best are two games that I feel that a lot of like old school players are not necessarily, they're behind, but not necessarily full force. And I feel those two are Street Fighter V and Dragon Ball FighterZ for two separate reasons. But I feel that Dragon Ball FighterZ has been extremely successful, and it's made by a development team in Arc System Works that has a very good track record with Guilty Gear, Persona, BlazBlue, you name it. However, Dragon Ball Z is such a pop culture phenomenon. Everybody in the world knows what Dragon Ball Z is. You don't have to be an anime fan. My mom knows what Dragon Ball Z is, and she doesn't know what anime is. So it's so popular that I feel that a lot of people that might initially start playing that game won't play for the right reasons. I don't feel that those are the same people that would just pick up Tekken 7 because, Goku, everybody knows who Goku is, but not many people know who Brian Fury is. So it's just different reasons. And I hope that those people don't expect fighting games to continue on in that way, because I felt that Dragon Ball FighterZ, I didn't play a lot of it, but it kind of held my hand a little too much than I would like my fighting game to.
Yeah.
And I felt somewhat the same way about Street Fighter V, even though I've never been a big Capcom player, but I felt that Street Fighter 4 was a little, it made me work for what I was doing. And Street Fighter V it made things easier. And I'm not a big fan of that. I like fighting games to be somewhat hard. They don't have to be King of Fighters 13 hard, but I don't like them to hold your hand to make everything somewhat homogenous. And I was actually speaking about this to two friends of mine who play fighting games. With Street Fighter V compared to Tekken 7, how I see Street Fighter V and somewhat a little bit of Dragon Ball FighterZ is that the characters might not be homogenous, but the gameplay is. So the style is similar. You can't really do much but rush down or play sort of fish crush counter. There isn't a lot of depth as far as how your game plan expands. Unlike, if you take Street Fighter 4, for example, Yun does not play anything like Gen. But Mika and Karen kind of play similar. They're just using different moves. And with Dragon Ball Fighters, I mean, everybody for the most part has the same tools. You have top tiers and some low tiers, but the pace is set, so you know what to do. It's just a matter of execution at that point.
Yeah.
And with Tekken 7, I feel that some of the characters actually are homogenous because they have traditional moves. You have a down 4 or down forward 1. Some characters have a 1+2 throw. Some characters have a other command throw. So we all have somewhat of the same tools, but the gameplay is so different. I mean, you can play Tekken so different from a pace standpoint, from a reactionary base standpoint. It gives you options both offensively and defensively, so it constantly varies and changes. And I love the fact that it has so much depth. And I lean more on the fact that I want games to be harder to really inspire people to get better, rather than holding their hand. And then when they go out to play a game that doesn't do that, I don't want them to be shocked later when they play like, a game like Guilty Gear that doesn't play anything like Dragon Ball Fighters. It might look similar, but once you see the mechanics in Guilty Gear, like, oh wait, this is not what I signed up for. So that's my little trepidation about that. But overall, I think we're trending in the right direction. Sorry, I talked there for a long time.
No, dude, that's fine. This podcast is all about organic conversations, and wherever you go with it, we can flow that direction. I actually like that you gave that exposition on it, because I feel the same way. Like, I remember I was getting really hyped up for Dragon Ball Fighters, just because of the animation style, and I'm thinking it was going to play similar to Guilty Gear Exard. I'm like, I really love Exard, but then when I actually got around to playing it, after the first month, and I actually put it down and I didn't touch it again until like they sent me the Nintendo Switch version, which I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Playing it on the go casually. Like, I look at it that way. I can play it casually with friends. I would never play it competitively. But I have noticed, especially this year, with the amount of games that have been coming out that are very, very simplistic, like Blade Strangers, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, and SNK Heroines, and I'm like, yeah, you're getting a lot of casuals in. And I've said this before, and I've triggered a lot of people by saying this, but casuals are good for getting your numbers up, like your sales numbers initially, but they're not going to be the ones that stick around to help the games or whatever your industry or genre is stay and flourish. They're not going to be that. And when you've got all these games that are super simplistic with systems, with assist buttons and all this and that, you're not going to have the, if they're getting so used to that and then they think they're really good, what happens when they go over to another fighting game and then they've got to really work? Like, take some, for example, let's use a Street Fighter 5 as an example. I agree. It's very simplified, especially coming off of Street Fighter 4, where if you were to have that same person play something like King of Fighters 14, good Lord.
Yeah.
Good luck to you.
Yeah. It would be quite the rude awakening. And I don't personally mind. I've known a lot of friends that actually got into the FGC through Persona 4 Arena because they liked the Persona franchise. And then they stuck with it. So they're in a similar predicament as maybe somebody who's going to buy Dragon Ball Fighters tomorrow because he likes Goku. And then all of a sudden he decides that, hey, I really like how fighting games work. And that's absolutely fine. I just don't know how often that example will happen with these more simplistic games. I hope they do, because I want to see fighting games succeed. But I also am a little bit cautious with, I hope developers don't cater to that audience, because I don't feel that they'll stick around if Dragon Ball Fighters 2 becomes like, Guilty Gear Accent Core, if it plays like that game.
Yeah.
I just don't see the same sales numbers. It could look the same. It could have the same flashy animation, same, everything. But if it doesn't play the way it does, I think you'll lose a big proportion of your somewhat casual player base that bought the game for $60. Now, I think tournament numbers might be the same, because FGC is FGC. They're hardcore. They'll play no matter what the game is. So that's not who I'm talking about. The 800 people that played or Dragon Ball Fighters at Combo Breaker when I went this year, those guys will stay. But it's the grandiose landscape of Dragon Ball Fighters that plays that game online or plays it, with their buddies. Those guys, I don't believe, will stick around if you cater to the hardcore FGC. So it's kind of a give and take. Yes, they are paying customers and they are flourishing our community, but I feel that developers really should take a look and see who stuck with them when nobody else did, and that's us. That's like the hardcore FGC that plays Under Night and Birth, that plays, King of Fighters 13, games that normal people don't pick up, games that people that play Call of Duty rather play Call of Duty versus, a game like, Tekken 6 or whatever. I mean, just name it. So it's a fine line, and I don't know how developers and publishers can walk it, but it's a difficult situation.
It really does concern me that there's this focus on the tag fighters and the anime fighters, because it's like, at what point, when this trend goes away and these companies are focusing so heavily on it, what are they going to fall back on? You got so many companies that have neglected their franchises. Like, I mean, Sega is just straight up neglected Virtua Fighter. So, but
it's going to be, I feel the next 2 years in the fighting game landscape are going to be very interesting to see in which direction we go towards. And I'm pretty optimistic. I have a feeling that we will find a pretty good balance between, the new community that is perhaps has been catered to within the last, 10 months, as far as the simplicity of some of these games. But I feel that, we usually go back to the FGC, and I feel if history shows, any sort of consistency, that's what's going to happen. So,
all right. I wanted to ask you, since I know you're not much of a Capcom guy, you're more SNK and Tekken and Virtua Fighter, but so, and I love talking about this. So in the 90s, in the early to mid 2000s, it was Capcom and SNK back and forth. What, and I find it funny, a lot of people actually don't know that the bulk of SNK staff is ex-Capcom, but what do you think was the key determinant in that rivalry? Like, what made them just compete back and forth? And what do you think made SNK go under?
Ooh, I'm not entirely sure as far as why they went under, because I don't think I was a part of it, because I really enjoyed SNK games. But I feel both of those franchises have so much legacy, whether you look at the skill cap in which they play with. Whether you look at Third Strike or Alpha Series or all the King of Fighters or, CVS. There's a lot of skill going into those games, but just the essence and the legacy that goes into some of these characters, they've been around for so long that they are really like foundational poles for both of those franchises. And I just feel that they have so much, they both have such a rich history that it was actually a really cool rivalry to see for them to go back and forth. And I think SNK, like current SNK, is actually almost coming back, because I feel that they have some plans in the works. And it was, in my opinion, of last generation, I felt that King of Fighters 13 was the best fighting game of last generation, but that's just my humble opinion.
I agree with you fully.
And yes, that game was hard, and it wasn't for everybody, and it was for very like strict, hardcore FGC people. But when I look at a fighting game, and I was terrible at it, I could not play King of Fighters 13 to save my life. But when I look at a fighting game, that's what I want, and I feel that they really care about their community, because you saw with King of Fighters 14, everybody was ragging on that game. It doesn't look good. This is not what we signed up for. And then they patched it, and it doesn't look, it still looks a little awkward at times, but it looks way better than it did initially. And I commend them for that, because a lot of other developers or publishers could have just pocketed the money and said, well, whatever, we already got your $60, so we'll work on it in the next game. But they didn't do that, and I very much appreciate that. And I feel that Bandai Namco does the same thing, and Capcom is starting to turn around a little bit. But I think the future bodes really well for all three of those publishers. So I'm excited.
And I'm kind of noticing, I'm going to piggyback off of what you were saying about SNK coming back, because I know they lost the rights to a lot of their franchises. In, I want to say, the early 2000s, around 2001, they went under. Because I forgot the name of the company. One company, I think it was Evoga or something, had the rights to King of Fighters and to Samurai Showdown. But I feel like SNK play more as well. Since they have basically bought back all of their franchises, I think we are going to see the resurgence of SNK. And I was talking to someone else about this, and they're like, well, that ship passed for SNK. I'm like, no, it really hasn't, because you need to think about it. A healthy and strong SNK is good for Capcom, because they were the only ones to push Capcom to be their best, to put out quality. I'm like, look at how well King of Fighters 14 has been doing. Even though, coming off of 13, 14 is a lot simpler in some aspects, not entirely.
Yeah.
But how well that game came out the same year Street Fighter 5 had a full 50 character roster. Super diverse play style. It really made Street Fighter 5 look horrible.
Even King of Fighters 14, I mean, we're talking about simplicity. Comparing King of Fighters 14 to something like Dragon Ball Fighters, it's still not as easy as Dragon Ball Fighters, because there's you still have to really learn that game. So that's why when I mentioned earlier, I just keep thinking to somebody who just picked up Dragon Ball Fighters and thinks they're really good at that game, to try and play a game like King of Fighters 13, they would have an aneurysm, because they would have no idea where to go. And that game was, I felt that game was pretty difficult, even for some veteran fighting game players. But I really, really like that game.
And I wanted to ask you, what fighting game system do you prefer or find the most fun and fluid? Like the King of Fighters, style of fighting, or do you prefer the Tekken style or Virtua Fighter? What is your favorite fighting game system?
As far as the space, 2D, 3D?
Yes.
Okay. I like them all. I'm actually I played a lot of Persona 4 Arena when that came out, or I guess both of those games. So Persona 4 Arena and then Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. And those are as traditional of Arc Sys type anime games that you would get, and they're very fast paced. They have anime neutrals, so that means full screen normals and kind of annoying hitboxes, and you have to just hold block strings. And it was for somebody who's more used to the King of Fighter style or Street Fighter-esque traditional, I'm going to hit you and then you're going to try and hit me. I think it would be very frustrating, but I enjoyed that platform, or I guess that type of pace in a fighting game. I also enjoy the more traditional ones in a good old footsie war and fundamental battle in a game like Street Fighter or King of Fighters. But I would say that where my strength lie the most is in the 3D space. So Tekken mostly. I enjoy Soul Calibur, but not to the extent that I've would play it as much as I would Tekken. I feel Tekken has, in my opinion, as of 2018, I think it has the most depth in a fighting game that we currently have. But I'm really biased because I love that franchise and I've played it for a long time. But I feel that it gives you so many options to both explore offense and defense, and it doesn't have a tutorial, and I kind of like that because it gives you the motivation to figure things out on your own, whether it has to do with matchup knowledge or just labbing up certain things and there's certain characters, which side to step, which strings to duck, which things you can respect, which things you don't have to hold as far as blocking. And as far as offensively, it has so much to do with, okay, should I end my combo short because there's a balcony break here, or should I end it with this ender because I'll get a high wall splat, or different situational where, you might drop your combo to reset because that a second launch will kill the opponent versus, setting up a potential running into a random rage art or something like that. So there's a lot of depth with every situation in that game. And I find myself constantly learning because it's just so expansive with how it teaches you. So I really enjoyed the 3D realm of fighting games.
Awesome. Whoa.
Somebody get that guy.
I know, he's running down the street with the bag of groceries. Go after him.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you too, and I know I asked Jeannie Lou the other day when I had her on the podcast, because this is really something I was talking to my FGC community out here, because I feel like I'm doing this and I don't realize that I am, because I don't keep up with the terms. It's because I'm all over the place. But where did the whole process of counting frames of animation and hitboxes come from? You know, the arcade days, or is it the current crop? I know for myself, I don't really know the terminology, but I'm a player who adapts on the fly. And I think I may be doing it, and I just don't realize what it is, just because I've been playing fighting games for so long. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know where it came from in the 2D space, but I know in a game like Tekken, you have to know frames because launch punishes are so important.
Yeah.
So you want to know what's -14 and you want to know what's safe. So, you know, like -9 in Tekken is safe. And that sounds kind of crazy because -9 in a 2D game is like you are dead. But when it comes to frames, I don't know when the 2D started to really pay real close attention to frames. I feel when people just started taking it a little more seriously as far as like how scientific they got with fighting games. And I don't know if you followed back in the Street Fighter 4 era, and I'm sure still now in Street Fighter 5, but Razor Cien, who used to play Gen in Street Fighter 4, he is such a scientist when it comes to frames and hit and hurt boxes. I remember watching one of his streams and some of his YouTube videos, and he is so meticulous with, you know, angles of dive kicks and, you know, where to throw certain fireballs. He's really, really he breaks it down in such a scientific way. And I feel that the players that take that extra mile, it obviously pays dividends because they know what they're doing and they almost put like mathematical equations to this, and it shows in results. So they don't really have to get rattled as far as like tournament nerves, because on paper they know the math, so they know, you know, how negative you are, where the hitbox lies. So I feel it's super, super advanced. But yes, most fighting game players, I would say, don't rely on, you know, certain frames and knowing which hitbox is where. Hitbox is a very anime thing, I feel, because anime hitboxes have insane ranges and they hit you from places you really shouldn't get hit from. And obviously Street Fighter 4, I'm sure you're familiar with Elena's hurt box. I mean, you couldn't hit that character. So yeah, so I feel that's it's very advanced. I feel in Tekken you kind of have to know, it's more of like an intermediate thing. Once you kind of learn your way around the ropes, you have to learn like, okay, so this is -10, I can jab this or whatever. But 2D, I feel that if you know frames, you're doing your homework.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking back to it. I was talking to my friend Keith of Video Gamers Hawaii, or VGH 808, and I was telling him, I'm like, man, I think I've been doing this for years, because every fighting game I've gotten from the 90s till now, I always go into the practice mode, and I didn't even realize the term labbing, but I'm always in practice mode with different characters, different setups, different situations. I'd learn the range of how, like, the distance between my character and my opponent, what this attack does, how much damage. And he's like, dude, you've been doing it already. You just don't know the terms.
Yeah.
I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, why do you think you adapt so well when you're playing someone? I'm like, good point.
Absolutely.
I'm like, yeah. I was like, when did it get to the point we were starting to use these terms? He's like, dude, mid to late 2000s. I was like, oh, that's around the time I had actually stepped away from game. Okay.
Yeah. And I feel that Street Fighter 4 was also a big part of that, because all of a sudden you're hearing things like, I mean, frame traps were always a thing, but all of a sudden like option selects are a thing. So it's super advanced as far as like Street Fighter 4 had a lot of depth, because you couldn't play that game. You knew who the good players were. You couldn't just run over a really, really good player in Street Fighter 4 if you didn't really know what you were doing. So that's why I felt at the highest level, it was such a fascinating game to watch.
Yeah, I really agree. And it's funny, like in Street Fighter 5, I hear a lot of people, this is something I want to talk to you about too. I didn't write this question down, but I just thought about it. Tiered lists. Like, what is your take on tiered lists?
I feel that they exist in specific games, and then sometimes they don't exist, but people will still say they do because they're not doing as well. It just depends. I feel that obviously in some games you have characters that simply have either advantageous moves, or overall they're play style or pace, fits the sort of game meta more so than some others. So if you take an example like Street Fighter V, Mika and Karen, Cammy especially, they fit the way the meta works in Street Fighter V as far as like rushing down, staying safe, fishing for crush counters, throw shimmy. They fit that script. But Fang can't really do that. He can try, but there's going to be a point of where he's going to be putting himself in a risk if he makes one simple mistake. And I feel some characters in like Street Fighter V that have to make more mistakes in order to be put in a really bad situation. So games like anime games definitely have tier lists because you have simply characters that either aren't as mobile or don't have as much range, and they're fighting against characters that, you know, can really expose that. A game like Tekken, I feel that technically, yes, it has tier lists, but it doesn't really matter because you can take because I said the characters are somewhat homogenous in the way they play, or not the way they play, but the tools that they use, is that you can take a character that's quote unquote bad, right? So you take like Gigas in Tekken, and you can get top 8 with him at a major tournament if the player skill complements that character. So I feel it's a lot harder to do that in a game like Street Fighter V compared to a game like Tekken 7 because it's more of like an uphill climb depending on the character that you choose. So it depends on which game you're playing, but yeah, they're definitely a thing.
Well, and I agree. I feel like two games that really stressed like super homogeneous gameplay or characters was, I'd say, Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown and definitely Tekken. I'd say Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection up to the current Tekken 7.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like any character you picked, you know, you could easily you could easily win. Like, the tools were all there, whereas I agree, like, if you go into Street Fighter 5, it's not that way. And I've been watching a lot of tier lists, like videos or YouTubers or fighting game YouTubers are talking about like Street Fighter 5 Season 3, how they've considered Cody, you know, my main character in Street Fighter, as the lowest tier character in the game. He's trash.
I've seen that.
And it's funny because I'll play, and I'm not gonna throw their names out there, but I'll play these YouTubers that are making these lists and saying how bad he is, and I'm just decimating them with Cody, and then they're like, "Oh, how are you doing that?" I'm like, I'm adapting with the tools I have, but I recognize that there are limitations. Like, I can't, you know, them changing his Zonk Knuckle. It doesn't have the guard crush ability. He can't sidestep projectiles. I'm like, now I have to use the crack kick. Well, not the crack kick, but his forward hard kick or fierce kick, and then go into the Zonk Knuckle. Or I have to catch you jumping. I'm like, yeah, it changes my play up or my play style, but he's not the worst character. I still reserve that for what's that guy? The villain who turned out to be a joke with the dreads. I can't think of his name.
Oh, I forgot the name.
Nikali.
Yeah, Nikali.
he was he was a joke. Yeah. They hyped him up too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel that a tier list is really predicated on what the game allows you to do. And if you can find a character that does that with the easiest, or does it with ease with the least amount of risk, that would be high tier. And a character like Cody, yes, he can rush down, but not as good as Cammy. So that's why perhaps he's not as good as Cammy. And I feel that Street Fighter V rewards people that are up in your face and putting frames on you and making you block strings and making you, throw out bait shimmies or think that you're going to get thrown and then you get crush countered. So because a character like Cammy or Akuma have those certain tools, unlike, Fang or Cody, that they're not seen in the same, level on the tier list. But I feel that a lot of times player skill can actually do away with tier lists. And if you're a good Cody player, you're a good Cody player.
Yeah. And, shifting gears, I kind of wanted to ask you this as well. But, with the FGC, it's been, and I would say, some would say partly, I'm going to say almost entirely responsible for keeping the fighting game genre alive with, you got critical moments like Daigo's epic comeback and pushing, the scene, just pushing for major tournaments, both local, national, and global.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they will be able to maintain that momentum, especially with coverage from groups like E-League? And are they likely to draw more people into the scene?
Drawing more people into the scene, I feel it's actually like almost cross-pollination with how we talked about simplicity is. I think yes, but I don't know who those, like, I don't know if those are the type of people that will stick around, if that makes sense. Yeah. I actually spoke to the people I did my podcast with about esports, and they're like FGC veterans, and they both said that they understand why it's there, but they don't like that, but that they don't like it. And I personally share the same sentiment and the fact that I love FGC, like grassroots values. And I love the fact that we're a little different from your run-of-the-mill esports. So we're not like Dota, we're not like League of Legends. I mean, just look at our commentators, look at our players. We don't look the same. We're such a different community. And I always compared it to, I don't know if you're a mixed martial arts fan.
I am.
Well, me too. I'm very much so. And I really enjoy watching the UFC and Bellator and, all these other promotions. And I've actually compared it akin to the FGC because I feel that, I mean, if you look at Roger Goodell versus Dana White, I mean, they're both commissioners of sanctioned sports, but Roger Goodell is out there with a suit and tie on a podium talking about, how they're going to change, this and that in a very PC way. And here you have Dana White saying, F that guy, F this guy. And he's very uncut and raw. And that's how I feel the FGC is. So by trying to put a suit and tie on us, it takes away a little bit of our identity, because I feel that I love the fact that we're a little, uncut and uncensored, because that's who we grew up in. And that's, we grew up in like arcades where, you could talk crap to the other guy while he's, getting destroyed or whatever. And it was just a part of the culture. And I really enjoyed that. And I'm not saying that we should all be savages, but I just love the fact that we have some personality. And I feel with esports, yes, we will grow, and we will go pretty far, because I feel that fighting games have a lot of depth and everybody likes to see competition. However, little things like, I'm sure you recall when Fudo had to change Armika's costume because he was on ESPN2. Little things like that, I feel, take away from hardcore FGC grassroots values. And it's a sacrifice that has to be made, because I love seeing fighting game players making money. But I also really enjoy old school fighting game mentality. So it's a give and take. But hopefully we can find some sort of balance, and we can kind of make it work,
Yep, I agree. And I wanted to ask you, and I asked this question also to Jenny as well, because I want to get your take on it, because I know you've done a video on this, and it's really amazing. And everyone listening and watching, I hope you go and check out MacSplicer's YouTube channel. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe on it too. So I want to ask you about the personas in the FGC. So, and now I want to ask you, are they just personas, or do you think they're true to life reflections of the people? Given that, they have you had the good guys and we have the bad guys in the FGC. I think of it similar to wrestling, because I know a lot of the FGC personalities, and primarily ones that are the bad guys. And it's knowing them outside of, being in front of the camera or at the tournament scenes. They're entirely different people, in my opinion. Yeah. But I want to get your take on it.
I mean, I think you'll have like heroes and villains, or I guess in our case, we kind of have heels, similar to wrestling. Yeah. But I personally don't put too much stock into it either way, because that's not why I watch, fighting games, or that's not why I follow certain personalities. One of my favorite players from last generation, and quite frankly still this generation, is GamerB. Because I felt that the way he played Adon was very resonating with how, I like a player to play like Street Fighter 4 if I were to play it as much as he would. That's kind of like how I wanted to look. So, and I also really liked his personality and the way he played, and what he stood for. So that's why I followed him. As far as the rest of the FGC, I feel that, and this is just my opinion, I mean, you can take it with a grain of salt, but I feel that the players who perhaps don't make as big of a splash in tournaments or as much of a, they're not as much of a needle mover compared to like some pro players, they have to resort to certain actions. And the one thing I don't like is I don't like seeing sort of the personalities going at each other, and it just becomes sort of like FGC TMZ. And I don't think we want to get to a point like that, because it's just it's very deconstructive, and we're not getting anywhere by doing that. But as far as the personalities, I feel that every community has them. I'm sure Call of Duty has, a bunch of heels that, swear on stream and get pissed or whatever. And I'm sure they also have a bunch of people who just laugh off getting losing and are extremely PC and everything that they say. I'm saying if that's really who you are, then be you. I don't have a problem either way. I just, as far as following them, it really depends on how much I personally resonate with them. But yeah, I do think you compared it to wrestling, I do feel that there are, yes, a lot of similarities in that.
Yeah, and I feel like at the same time, while it can bring an entertaining factor to, the scene, and I think, with E-League, we kind of definitely saw that with certain people that were on it. Mm-hmm. They certainly were picked for entertainment value.
Yes. And yeah, and I mean, I think there's a place for that, but it can't be the only identity that the FGC has, because then we won't be taken as seriously. So I feel that you can sprinkle that in every now and again, but as long as the main focus is on player skill and the ones that actually put in the work, and the ones that you can highlight later as fact that, this is a lifelong journey. And they finally won this giant tournament, or they ended up as the #1 during this entire pro circuit. That's really what I want to highlight. So there's room for both, but I personally, I guess I stand on the other side where I enjoy more of the pro mentality.
Yeah. And, my last question about the FGC community is probably going to be the controversial one, but I have to ask you. So the FGC, and you've done a video on this as well, but yes, the FGC also draws heavy criticism in the sense that many say it's plagued with very toxic elitist community that often prevents newcomers to the fighting game genre to feel welcome. Do you think that this is a reality of the FGC, or do you think it's like many other things? There's always going to be two extremes of the polarity.
I didn't feel that way, but then again, I've been ingrained in the FGC for quite some time. I do feel that it is a bit intimidating to get into fighting games, because, or at least traditionally, they were very difficult to get into because of how you have to start. Mm-hmm. And even if you finish the entire tutorial, you do all of your combos in challenge mode, you finish the story campaign, and you go online and you still don't know anything about the game. You have to really put in a lot of time in order to become even somewhat, I guess, proficient. Mm-hmm. And I feel that's very foreign to a lot of, I guess, new age gamers, because they're kind of used to just having a game be a little easier than that. And I feel that where the quote unquote toxicity comes from is when you have people who perhaps don't really want to put in the work get rejected whenever they ask for help, because there's somewhat of like an unspoken vetting process with any fighting game, is that when veterans see newcomers, they will a lot of times beat them to the ground. And a lot of times when those newcomers come back, that's when you kind of earn your stripes, and they're like, okay, let me show you why I'm beating you to the ground. But it's the ones that don't come back that I feel that the FGC is, okay, no loss there, because they weren't truly dedicated. And I somewhat feel the same way. I said this before, that I felt that the role that the hardcore FGC plays for the newcomers is not of a mentor, it's a motivator. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the newcomers to really want to play and really want to put in the time and show their dedication to a genre we hold so dear, because we've put in hours. We've watched, thousands of, tape on either our character or other certain matchups to get better. We've gone in the lab. We've dedicated a lot of our life to this. And when we see somebody not respected in the same way and just kind of take it as a joke, I feel that, yes, there's somewhat of a disconnect there. Mm-hmm. But I feel that we're we're trending in a good direction where we're becoming a little more tolerant of people perhaps not being as experienced. And I feel the same way too, because I've been doing this where I've been trying to help newcomers along when I see them play Tekken or any other fighting, or like Rebirth or something like that, where here, let me show you like what you're doing wrong. And then I'm not going to let them win. But if they beat me, they know that it was a hard-earned victory, and that's really what I want. I want them to be truly committed, and I think you're seeing that. I think it's a very good foundational value to build a community, because then you have everybody who's really in it for the long run, instead of just, well, I just want to play something for fun.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Now, since we're winding down to the last couple questions, we're about to get into some murky water by asking this question. It was asked in the chat what you thought of Smash Brothers, and
gosh. This question comes up all the time.
I highly suggest anyone to go to MacSplicer's channel and watch the video. It's actually one of your most popular videos, and it's something that it's amazing how much controversy comes from just stating this. I guess you could call it a fact, because even the creator of Smash Brothers has stated it's not a fighting game, and people just don't want to accept what he says. It's funny, but I have to ask you, since Smash Brothers is often considered by many as a great fighting game, yet on the other hand, there's a very large vocal majority of us who also view Smash as nothing more than a competitive battle arena or party game. What is your take? And like I said, everyone, please go and watch his video. But what is your take on the status of Smash being part of the fighting game genre?
A part of the fighting game genre, I don't know how I can answer that. But as far as a part of the fighting game community, I would say no, because I feel that there is a segregation there in Smash and FGC. When I made that video, a lot of people were harping on me, well, you didn't answer the question as far as like, is Smash a fighting game? That wasn't my objective. My objective was to highlight why I feel that there's a certain divide within the two communities. And my reasoning for that is just we came from different places. If you look at Smash, where did it start? It started in a home console, which I'm not trying to disparage anybody by saying this, but if you have a home console, at least at that time, you were doing all right, or at least your family was doing all right. I mean, I grew up in arcades where I had to like take the quarters I was going to buy, lunch money with and go put it in the slot. And I'm not saying that, one side is better than another, but I feel that our foundation is so different and the way we think is a little different. So that's what I was trying to say there. So when you look at the Smash community, yes, they've worked very hard to make a name for themselves. And I'm not saying that they're not hardworking. I'm not trying to say that they're not a legit community, because I do believe they're a legit community. But when you talk about the fighting game community, there is a lot of crossover. I mean, we've just spoken about this for the last hour, how you've played all these fighting games. And if you ask me whether I played, Killer Instinct or King of Fighters, Street Fighter, Tekken, Persona, I can answer yes to that. And I can say, I can give you some sort of information. I might not be an expert in all those games, but I can give you some information about the community of each of those games, some characters from those games, how those games work. And I feel that Smash is not as reciprocating to that idea. They know Smash, they love Smash, and that's all they care about, which is absolutely fine. Because if you look at those two communities, they even have a divide within their own, I guess, big family tree of Smash 4 and Smash Melee. There's not even a lot of like cross-playing between those two. So the fact that a lot of people say that, Smash is FGC, they can't even get along within their own two games that they hold dear. So why would they really want to get along with people that don't play either of those games? So that was my point with that. And I felt that Smash does their own thing and FGC does their own thing. We just happen to share the same venue, which I don't see a problem with, because it just puts more light on both communities. And there isn't much crossplay from Smash and FGC games, but there is some. But I do believe that I think we can coexist and we can be respectful to each other, even if we might not always see eye to eye as far as like what we believe, or some of us what we believe a fighting game is or not. I just think that we're different, and it's okay to be different. We don't always have to agree or follow the same players, follow the same community. It's fine. I don't know why it's so sensitive. I feel a lot of people that actually, both from the FGC and Smash, that have these toxic arguments aren't truly a part of either community, because they just want to make, have blood in the water. They don't really care, for either community. They just want to start, some Reddit type drama. And I feel that most of the both communities aren't really interested in that. They're just interested in either fighting games or the Smash games.
Yeah. And I've basically had my experiences with the Smash community, and I feel there is in comparison to the FGC, I feel like there's a higher level of toxicity there when you say, like, if you were to say, hey, I don't like Street Fighter, to a Street Fighter fan, they'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. What are you interested in? Or, you say it to someone like Tekken or Virtua Fighter or, King of Fighters or Killer Instinct or any of that. There's a kind of oh, okay, that's cool. There's no offense taken to saying that. Mm-hmm. But if you were to say you don't like Smash, there is a whole paradigm shift. And that's what I've always found to be odd. And, I said that because I got into a YouTube drama with a significantly bigger YouTuber. When I was replying to someone else asking me if I think Smash is a fighting game, I said, fundamentally, I don't think it is. Mm-hmm. It similar to you, it came from the home arcade. I mean, the home consoles, it wasn't in the arcades. It's a different community. It's been it's basically been exclusive to Nintendo people. And, it started off as a party game. I'm like, plus the creator has stated numerous times it's not a fighting game. So I'm going with what he's saying out of respect to him. And then this other YouTuber jumped on it, started this whole drama. And I was getting, like, my wife and I, we were getting death threats.
Jeez.
From this guy's community because I said it's not a fighting game and because I wouldn't debate him. And I'm like, this level of toxicity it's just at the end of the day, it's just a game, but it's scary to see that the bulk of that community cannot take criticism of their game. They cannot accept that someone doesn't want to call it part of the fighting game community. They don't. It's scary. It's borderline, kind of psychotic in a way.
Yeah, but to be fair, I do believe that a lot of people that make those death threats or act that way online aren't truly a part of the Smash community. They're just people who take offense and decide to say it on the internet. I don't believe that anybody who actually goes to a tournament to attend, a Smash, event would act in that sort of way, because I've been to tournaments and I've seen Smash players. They're not like that. They're not the way that they're portrayed online. And same thing with fighting game players. There's a lot of fighting game players that like to spout a lot of toxicity. I don't know if you've ever visited like our Kappa from a few years ago. I haven't been there in a while, but that was a community that was based on toxicity. And that was like, I guess, homegrown FGC, but it's not the portrayal. It's the online, I guess, persona of people who are trying to mimic what the FGC is or what Smash is. And I don't find that to be legitimate or like the actual light of what those two are. They're just people who decide to take offense and decide to pick a side. And it's unfortunate, but I feel that you'll find that with any game. I mean, you could say the same thing about Minecraft and you'll have a bunch of people talking about, so yeah.
It's so true. Oh man. All right. And hey, we're getting out of the murky waters. We made it across the field and we're down to the last three short, but really good questions.
Excellent.
And I wanted to ask you, when it comes to fighting games, do you feel it's best to play with a fight stick, a fight pad, or do you feel either way towards either or what do you think? What are your preferences?
Well, I grew up playing actually both on a fight stick because I went to the arcades, and actually keyboard because I played, old school King of Fighters on PC. And I didn't really think about it back then. And then after I graduated high school and I started to get into fighting games again, I was playing on pad. And I know I didn't really like pad. I didn't feel that was the home for where I wanted to play fighting games, but that was just a personal preference. So I ended up getting a Japanese stick, and I played with that a little bit, but I felt that something was missing. So I actually moved to a Korean stick, which actually just has a bat top and Korean parts versus a Japanese ball top and Japanese parts. And ever since then, I've been playing with just a Korean arcade stick, which I've been loving ever since. I have seen a few players playing with hitbox or I guess custom pads and stuff like that. It all depends on preference. I mean, Luffy won Evo with a pad, so you can't say that you won't get results with it. And you have actually a bunch of Tekken players also play with pad, and they're doing their Korean backdashing and sidestepping. So I mean, you can do taunt it upper with a pad if you really wanted to. So it's they're all viable. I just feel that it's a matter of preference, and it kind of depends on also where traditionally you're most comfortable with. So growing up in arcades, I felt that arcade stick was the most fitting form for me. But people that came from shooters and games like that, I feel probably are more inclined to pick a pad because it's home,
Yeah. I know for myself, I started off in arcades, but a lot of times when my brothers and I, we couldn't go to the arcade, we had Street Fighter 2 and then Champion Edition and whatnot. We would just play that and Fatal Fury and King of Fighters at home. We were one of the very few that actually had the Neo Geo. I think it was the MVS. Oh man, we got that. That was the only thing we got for a whole year. Our parents were like, "No, you're not getting anything else." But we had the arcade stick and the arcade pad, well, the Neo Geo arcade stick and the pad, and I felt comfortable for years playing on stick, and then when I went off to college out here in Hawaii, I just started playing pad, and stick became foreign to me. And so in the recent years, like I've been buying, like if I ever cut on my camera and I took a picture or showed you like what I have, I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 arcade sticks over here to the left of me. And I just bought them because I love the art style and whatnot, but I was never very good at them. And, I got to give a shout out to my friends, Keith Lemos and Ray Blade or Ray Teruya and Video Gamers Hawaii, VGH 808, because I reached out to them. And I'm like, man, I need to learn how to play arcade stick because I don't want to keep buying these and not learn how to use them.
It's quite the transition, I feel.
It is. Oh my goodness. Like I told my friend Ray and Keith, because they're friends with Gutex and them. And they were telling me, they're like, you're going to have to just stick with it for a month. They're like, it's going to suck. You're going to feel like you're playing like crap. And there are days where I'm like, I just don't want to play this, period. And what I did to make myself accountable, I would stream playing stick.
Oh, man.
And I got so much crap. People are like, you suck at Street Fighter. I'm like, F you guys, I'm still learning on pad, arcade stick. But, I've gotten to this point now where if I'm not playing with an arcade stick, it feels weird. But, I can transition either way. But I wanted to get your take on the mixed box because I'm going to be reviewing that. And I'm not sure how I feel about that thing because I feel like it's an easy way to cheat.
Well, I've seen the mixed box. I don't know how exactly. I mean, I'm assuming it'll be tournament legal depending on, unless they ban it, which not entirely sure why they would, because yes, it is somewhat advantageous, but so are hitboxes. I mean, hitboxes are pretty advantageous because, you can charge and go forward, or especially for a game like Tekken, you can backdash in succession extremely fast, way faster than you could probably do on stick or pad. So, but also it's a matter of the player putting in the time to become proficient with that. So, if somebody can do that, you kind of have to give them props for it because yes, it might look like cheating, but there is work going behind that. It's not like all of a sudden they know how to play on hitbox. So I've seen actually Dimeback, who's an Asuka player in Tekken, try out the mixed box, and he said that he liked it because he was thinking about moving to keyboard, so it made more sense to him. I still believe he plays with just a regular Korean stick, but I saw him test it out, and he said he liked the idea. And I feel that it's probably for some people who might be keyboard players but don't necessarily want to deal with a lever of some sort, or don't want to play on pad, obviously, but still may want to attend tournaments without having to, take a sort of like an unbalanced keyboard on their lap. So I feel it's quite expensive from what I saw, but I feel that if people are somewhat in between, it could be a good product for them. So I'm interested to see players play with it and see how they do.
Okay. And my last two questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this one. What advice would you give to someone looking to get into fighting games, and also to those who play currently but would like to either get better or play competitively?
So to get into fighting games, just play and try to learn and get better. And if you have questions, you can ask the people that you lose to online all the time. And a lot of times they'll actually respond pretty favorably, be like, hey man, just, do this or do that. Or if you go to a local, same thing. I feel that players that see you put in time will be very accommodating with their time, and they will reciprocate that. So that was, at least that's my experience with fighting games, because even though like I've been around, I still have plenty of questions of things I don't understand. So I'll ask people who are more experienced than me, and I get the same answers. So if it comes to getting into fighting games, just play, earn your stripes, and trust me, you'll be rewarded back with advice or pointers or anything like that. As far as play competitively, I think obviously if you put in time, you'll be competitive eventually if you put in, I guess, productive time, not just, playing online without really trying to get better. You just, pressing a bunch of buttons in succession. But if you're actually trying to play correctly, you will get better. As far as pro play, you actually have to go in like the extra step and put in a lot of lab time, really understand the nuances, the things that separate good players from great players, and, just certain situations to be in, understanding how not to get rattled when things aren't going your way. There's a lot of things that go into fighting games that pro players have become almost synonymous with when it comes to executing and pressuring situations, or coming back from losers. So stuff like that, I feel that both it comes with experience, it comes with just simple knowledge, and just obviously practice makes perfect. So I feel that fighting games, I really feel that they're very accommodating once you get in. And if you fall in love with them, I think the community will fall in love with you back. So it's a good give and take there.
And definitely for anyone who's listening or watching, if you're out here in Hawaii, I got to give a special shout out to Video Gamers Hawaii 808, or VGH 808, because it's the most welcoming and the biggest fighting community that we have out here. Definitely come and check us out. We have tournaments every Tuesday and Thursday. Special shout out to Osiyami Bar and Grill for hosting our events. So definitely come and check us out. And Mac, if you're ever out here in Hawaii, definitely come through.
I'll make sure to do that.
So my last question is, what is your advice for those looking to get into YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, and or be just content creators, podcasters, or streamers?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, you have to have passion, right? And
yeah.
I personally, when I first got into it, I was like, I really enjoy fighting games, but I'm not as good of a player like, or I would be in tournaments. And also, I can't really afford to just travel to all these tournaments without getting a sponsor, but I'm not good enough to be a sponsor. So I was like, how can I affect, the fighting community without being a player? And I felt that because of my background in writing, it would make a lot of sense for me to write about fighting games. And then the video editing came later, because I saw that a lot of people enjoy watching more so than reading. It's just a part of, like, I guess, society. I think these days it's just easier to take in media. So that's when I started to make videos. And advice, I would just say keep going. I mean, the initial part is hard, because you put something up that you've worked on for so long, and then nobody cares. Nobody cares, and that's a bummer. But you can't get discouraged, because if you care, then other people eventually will care, and they'll find you somehow. And I feel that if you put in a lot of work into doing something that you like for the right reasons. So I know actually a lot of people that got into YouTube and just have been burnt out because they got into it for the money or exposure or fandom or anything. And they just they couldn't keep it up, man. And it's unfortunate because some of those people had really good ideas, but because the fact that they weren't focused on their passion and were focused on more so the exposure of things, is that they burnt out and they're not content creatives anymore. But for the people that actually care about something and enough to put in like a lot of time into it, it's reciprocated with people who will care back and watch your videos and, you know, give you pointers on things to either improve on or things like that. So as long as you have passion and you care enough, other people will care too. And it's a matter of time until somebody notices. So don't get discouraged. That's number one. And two, just keep on trucking, because everybody works hard, right? So it's kind of like what separates you from the herd. It's if everybody's working hard, you just have to work just a little harder and I'll get it done.
Yep, I agree, man. Well, that's I actually lied. I got one last question.
Go ahead.
That is, when are we gonna have some matches? You pick the game, I'll play. I'll take the L.
Sure. For sure. Hey, yeah. I play pretty much any game. I mean, I'm not great at all of them, but if it's a fighting game, you can probably bet that I've played it at least once. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, I know you're big into Street Fighter 5. I'm not very good at that game, but I mean, I can play a little bit Sagat. So I mean, at least Street Fighter 4 Sagat. I don't know how he is in Street Fighter 5, but I'm assuming he would be somewhat similar because he's, you know, that same old fireball, standing hard kick. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Tekken 7, Under Night and Birth, you name it, Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, I play them all. So yeah, for sure.
I have them all. So hey, I play everything. I actually, you know, a lot of people think I play a lot of Street Fighter 5. I actually don't. The only times I really play that is when I'm streaming.
Oh, really?
Other than that, I'm playing Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, Tekken 7, Guilty Gear, what was it? R2, Rev 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rev 2.
And King of Fighters 14. And my latest addiction is fighting EX Layer.
Oh, I'm very excited for that one. I've been waiting for it to come on PC, so that's I'm very excited for that release.
I think it should be. I think last time I spoke to some of the developers with my rusty Japanese, I think it's coming soon. It is coming soon. It just went on sale on PSN, so it's like 35% off right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I'll definitely check it out once it reaches that platform.
Well, all right, man. I want to thank you again. It's been a complete and total honor having you on the show.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's been great.
Definitely, man. And everyone watching and listening, make sure you head over to MacSplicer's YouTube channel. Make sure you smash that subscribe, ding the notification bell. This man has amazing content, some of the best, if not the best, that I've seen on YouTube. And he's also on iTunes as well. So if you're on iTunes looking for a new podcast to listen to get informative content, make sure you go and subscribe to the MacSplicer podcast. It's truly, truly amazing. And man, where else can they find you?
Well, I'm just on Twitter, so MacSplicer on Twitter. And then if you want to read the articles instead of watch the videos, that's available on MacSplicer.com as well.
All right. And again, make sure you guys go and check those out. And also, the links for all of that is in the description of this video and podcast down below. So make sure you go and check that out. And with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you guys for watching. This is going to be uploaded very shortly on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spotify, as well as TuneIn Radio. And it's coming soon. Like I said before, I've signed contract with FM Radio, or XF. I can't even say it right now. I'm tongue-tied. Sirius FM and XM Radio. So it's going to be coming to those in syndication as well. So with that being said, people, we'll catch you in the next one. Did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova podcast? Well, I hope you did. And if you did, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And let us know what we can improve upon, what you liked, what you didn't like, and all that good stuff. And just make sure you always have a good time. That being said, this is your boy Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out, and I'll catch you on the next episode.